that big revision of the Genesis Coupe a couple years ago, we brought the 2-liter turbo version here in R-Spec trim and gave it a good shakedown. It turned a seriously quick lap time, but something about it just didn't feel quite right. It had way too much understeer on corner turn-in, brakes were fading after a couple of laps, and the gearbox just wasn't very good. We're back now though in the V6 version in GT trim, which means we get all the R-Spec goodies plus a little more. And what we want to find out today is, not only is it quicker around our test track, but is it more of a driver's car? Have they addressed the handling balance? Have they addressed the gearbox? And are the brakes going to hold up a little bit more? First of all, let me say that the standout feature in this car is that 3.8-liter V6 up front. It's rated, I think, 348 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, and boy, it feels like it's making all of that. It also makes a spectacular sound, as you can hear now. But what you're going to find out next is that the brakes still really aren't great. And to me, it's a brake pad issue. It's got Brembo calipers all around, which are world class, but it's got no initial bite, which is almost always a function of brake pads. So I think Hyundai just went a little too conservative on their pad choice, and that could easily be addressed by a track day enthusiast just by giving her a more aggressive set of pads. R-Spec trim, you get 19-inch wheels and tires, and it's a staggered setup. There's summer tires, 225 up front, 245 out back, and man, I just wish they put a bigger tire on the front because it still has that understeer. I think it's less pronounced than it was on that 2-liter car a couple of years ago. Maybe because with the V6 I'm able to rotate the rear end more on throttle, as I'm doing there. But it just feels like it lacks front grip. And that's frustrating in a car with this much motor, with really a beautiful rear drive setup, a torsion unlimited slip out back. It's got all the right bits. So if we could just dial out that understeer, boy, it would be so much faster and, more importantly, a lot more fun to drive. Honestly, I think it's more of a drift car than it is a lapping car or a hot lap car. It's so much fun to drift this thing. Not much has changed on the exterior for 2014, although this does come in a new color called the Visa Blue, which I think looks quite nice. It also has new daytime running lights, which is a nice little straight slash of LED lights, which I think looks pretty cool. Other than that, it's got all the R-Spec trimmings, so it's got 19-inch wheels with summer tires, those big Brembo brakes, and a bunch of stuff underneath that you can't see, like a track-tuned suspension and a limited slip differential. Much like the exterior, not a lot has changed inside, but I do like the fact that they've put a much more aggressive side bolstering in the seats here, so it really does hold you in nicely on the track. The steering wheel is apparently revised a bit. I think it's a higher grade leather, and overall I just like the diameter of it. It's a nice, clean, simple design, not a lot of buttons. Other than that, there are some technology upgrades. You can actually control things with your smartphone. You can start the car with your smartphone and you can find it in, say, a busy parking lot. So that's kind of cool. A couple of little complaints though. For one, the shift knob is just kind of low rent. It feels cheap in your hand. And there's also these 3 gauges on the dash which are a little bit confusing. The first one makes sense, oil temperature. Why not put that front and center? But then there's a torque meter which shows you how much torque you're using, which seems kind of silly. And then there's a fuel consumption meter, which typically you'd see on a digital display somewhere. So I'm a little confused to see that in an analog style gauge. So is this 3.8 GT version of Hyundai's Genesis Coupe really faster and more fun than the 2-liter turbo car I tested here last summer? Well, I did a best lap time today of 1:23.6, which is almost a second and a half faster than the turbo car. So we can check that one off the list. And as far as the more fun part goes, well, I've got to apologize to Hyundai because I've absolutely torn up the rear tires, drifting this car everywhere.